Welcome to the Ground Zero Podcast.
So, I'm just going to go ahead and start off. I'm super bummed.
Buddy.
I'm super bummed. And this has nothing to do with what we usually talk about, but I had the chance to watch a young lady that I coached in AAU basketball. She's playing at UNC Chapel Hill. Kennedy Todd Williams. If you guys will remember the very first full episode called Introduction, I shared about, a couple people who inspired me to do the podcast. And one of those was Taylor Todd Williams. And let me correct something I got wrong in that episode. She is a basketball coach at Cape Fear Community College, not Brunswick Community College. So let me get that right first. I got to chat with her and she laughed about it. So it was cool. But so her sisters, while Taylor's a coach at Cape Fear, her sister Kennedy Todd Williams plays for the Tar Heels, plays for Chapel Hill Tar Heels. And she's a junior, I believe. And she's an integral member of that women's basketball team. So they were playing. Now we record these episodes pretty far in advance. So, we're here, it's March 20th? March 20th today, us recording this. This will probably come out sometime in May. But it's March Madness right now. And the ladies, the Lady Tar Heels are in the tournament. Second round against Ohio State. Eesh. And Ohio State's good. They're good. Tough team, well coached. But our team's tough too, scrappy. And the girls played a really good game. We got down by 12 at the beginning or early in the fourth, and I thought, well, that's it. It's over. And they rallied. Even their star, the point guard, I forget her name, but she twisted her ankle, had to come out of the game.
Yikes.
So old Kennedy put the team on her back and made some big plays, and really all the girls stepped up playing really good, denying passes, defense, getting out in the passing lanes, which is what they're really good at. And anyways, long story short, I'll drag it on forever because I'm a coach. Right. We can walk through every detail of the game if you want.
Mr. Analytics.
Yeah. But anyways, they pulled it back, tied up the game. And the star player, she actually came in. She's trying to pull Willis Reed out there.
Yeah.
And came back in and she played good. She hit the shot to tie it up for us. And then there was just over 9 seconds left, and they ran a little deal where they got kind of a dribble handoff to Ohio State's best player, and she did what she does. She got into the paint, made a tough shot, so got them up by 2. And then for the life of me, now let me go on record. I like what I see from the coach of the Chapel Hills ladies team. I think she's a good coach. I think she's done very well. But this play call,
there's always a but in there,
dude. At the end of the game, this play call, I just don't understand. I mean, basically, you've got a girl on the baseline that makes a V cut. Runs up towards the 3-point line, makes a V cut to cut back door, and then we're making a long throw from half court to her. Now there's 1.8 seconds left, and I mean, this is enough time to get a catch, get a dribble, get a good shot. Mm-hmm. We're like throwing a lob. And look, I love girls basketball. I've coached girls basketball for years. But we're not catching any lobs.
No, sir.
For a dunk.
No,
so
sir.
I don't know what. I don't know. We just didn't have anything really loaded up for it. So we lost, but those girls played good. Kennedy's got another year. She played great. She hit 2 big buckets. She kind of got ISO'd on a player and had her way with them like she can do. Super great player. So shout out Kennedy. If you get to listen to this, we're really proud of you. You had a great season, and that was a good game. And to all the girls, it was really a good game. But yeah, so when you're watching your team, and they're not even my team. I don't even like Carolina, but of course,
that's tough.
I root for them because of her. So I'm a Kennedy fan, not necessarily a Tar Heel fan.
Go Heels.
But yeah, well, whatever. But anyways, you feel like you lose when they lose.
I feel that way all the time.
Yeah. So what's going on with you, Cooper, man? What's Since we're talking about sports, man, what are the Canes doing? How are we doing?
Well, speaking of tough losses, we lost Andrei Svechnikov to a knee injury.
He's got a great name, though.
Oh yeah, tough Russian cat.
Right.
And we lost him. That was a big blow. Earlier in the season, we lost Pacioretty to an Achilles injury. So those are Pacioretty's a killer scorer. Svech really he just about does everything.
Right.
You know, he's great with assists. He's great with the puck. Great scorer. So, and you really hate it. You hate it even more because it's after the trade deadline now. So now you just got cap space you can't use.
Right.
But the boys are rallying. We won in overtime against Philadelphia Saturday night, which was great because Marty Natchez, man, you just want to talk about clutch.
Yeah.
This is the fourth or fifth time he scored a goal in the last minute of the game to tie it up this year with 0.3 seconds left.
Well, that leaves no room for anything else. So.
No kidding. And then in overtime, Sebastian Aho just takes the puck right from the center line and just goes right through the defense and scores an amazing goal, which ended up being a hat trick for him on the night. So that's a big win for us, especially coming off of a loss. The boys are trying to rally. You know, we got playoffs coming up, but we have the week from you-know-where this week. We've got the Rangers twice, and then we got Toronto on Saturday.
You got to go like home and away with them?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the Rangers are tough for us. There's a little bit of a rivalry. Well, rivalry would be better if we had beaten them already this year, but we have not. We're down 2 games to them. Yeah, and they knocked us out of the playoffs last year, so there's a little bad blood there.
Right.
I'm not a Rangers fan by any means. So that's tough. We play them on the road Tuesday, home Thursday, and then Saturday night we play Toronto at home. Then Sunday we play the best team in the NHL, which is the Boston Bruins.
Okay.
So that's 4 games right there in a row. It's murderer's row.
Where do we look in the standings? How are we?
We're number 1 in the Metro right now. The Devils are only a point behind us.
Okay.
So we got to win some of these games.
Gotcha.
I mean, all is not lost. We'll still make the playoffs. But you really want to be in that top seed so you can play one of the wild cards.
Yeah.
Well, and because the Eastern Conference is so stacked this year with teams, they're going to beat each other's brains out. So it's almost like it's setting it up for a team to come out of the West and kind of take the Stanley Cup.
Right.
Because, I mean, it's going to be 7-game wars all through the East.
I got you.
So that you just hope that nobody falls ill to injury. But here's the great thing about hockey players, though, is they are complete nut jobs and will play through just about anything unless they need surgery.
Man.
So there's a lot of team toughness there. And the boys look like they're rallying, so I have far from lost faith. I'm real excited to get to the postseason.
Okay. How about I'm gonna bring it back to basketball since you are a Tar Heel.
Yikes.
Through and through.
This is gonna be a tough take.
How about those men's Heels? Buddy, they didn't make the tournament, and they said we're not even gonna go to the NIT. We don't even want that. We don't want that smoke.
Buddy, pride cometh before the fall. And you're the one that tells me that there is a promise attached to that. It's one of the few promises.
Hey, and that played out. Because, I mean, last year, that run that they made, I don't want to say it was a fluke. It wasn't. I mean, They were playing good ball, but Caleb Love was hitting some pretty crazy shots last year in the tournament, you know?
Yes.
Really clutch shots, and I don't know that he necessarily has a clutch gene. I don't know if that's really his thing, and this whole season, he's just been shooting from everywhere and anywhere all day. I feel like that's been the big problem with the team this year.
I think really that it comes down to because when you have a team that but they played in the Natty, right. Everybody comes back except for one player, Manic.
Right. Yeah, maybe he's the GOAT. Who knows?
Well, that would be the case. You would think. And Hubert Davis is a great coach.
Yeah.
He
allegedly, he was last year.
Well, here's the issue, right? Is clearly, I mean, there was something that happened, and the locker room is out of sorts. You don't have a good locker room. The boys aren't together. Then it doesn't matter who you got on that team.
Yeah.
I mean, how many NBA quote unquote super teams have you seen that can't get it together because of personalities clash?
Yeah. I mean, I was super happy for you guys when you got Hubert Davis as the head coach.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, so I grew up in the 90s, and he played for Carolina in the 90s against my Blue Devils, against my national championship Blue Devils. And Hubert he was great, man.
Oh, he's a stud.
Great shooter, had a good career in the NBA with New York Knicks, and he moved around a little bit. But also, like, just the best person.
Right.
Just honest guy, really cares about the kids, Christian man, loves the Lord and is not afraid to share that. And so I was really, really happy for you guys. I wasn't sure about our new coach, John Shire, but it seems like he's done all right this year.
Yeah, I'd say so.
They've done all right. They just got exited out by Tennessee in the tournament, but it is what it is. I didn't really expect them to get much further than that. So
yeah, I'll be 100% honest with you that after the Panthers' extremely lackluster season, and after the Tar Heels' very rough start with Baycott getting injured, and then the whole locker room debacle, which we're not going to get into because it's not really grade A material for the audience. But I pretty much quit watching all the teams from Carolina except for my Hurricanes.
Yeah.
So there comes that thing that you were talking about earlier. Like clearly we're the type of people that when I love a team, I might as well be on the bench with them.
Right.
Like I got the jerseys. I say we. I wear the hat on game day.
I say we.
Like I am on this team.
We are Hurricanes.
So getting a little upset when it doesn't go the right way.
Yeah.
I like to call it passion. My wife likes to call it something else.
Stupid.
Yeah. Yeah.
I could hear Brass say it.
Oh, but don't let her fool you.
Mm-hmm.
That thing's competitive too now.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we're sitting on a cruise ship watching the All-Star game because Svetch was in the All-Star game.
Right.
And it wasn't going well for us. The All-Star game means nothing. It's a joke.
Yeah.
It's 3-on-3 hockey. It's just like the stupid flag football thing the NFL does. Nobody cares.
Right.
We weren't winning. Mariah walked out of the room. Rod Brindamore was the coach of our team because he was the best coach in the Metro.
Yeah.
So because our boys were not winning, she did not want to watch.
Yeah, I get it.
Hey, me too. I was a little proud in that moment. I'm not going to lie to you.
That's right.
I married a good one.
Well, let's change gears. So we recently just had one of our worship at the barn nights.
Yeah.
And just to kind of give a little detail about that, so something that we've been doing in our community in partnership with New River Community Church, local church in the area. They've got some property that they've acquired that's going to be where their new campus and daycare, and they plan on putting a rec center out there as well, which would be great for this community.
Yeah.
One thing about this church and the pastor and the leadership, man, they really invest in youth. They are thinking forward, which is such a blessing. So super excited about all that, but they've got a barn out there on the property, that was there, when they bought it, and we've managed to clean it up. And we've had a couple of these worship at the barn events, and it's really just a no frills time of worship. A very humble setting. I mean, it's a barn, and we haven't done anything to make it feel like anything else. We just cleaned it up some, but man, the two times we've been in there, we've just had really powerful encounters with the Lord. Yeah. And really got into a space of really just decreeing over our community, that God bring healing to, people struggling with addiction. And I really felt the Holy Spirit all over that. And just a sweet presence. We don't have a ton of people showing up. It is open to the community. And if you're in the local area, if you're in Sneads Ferry, Holly Ridge, Hampstead, any of the surrounding area, we put out the message. Right now we're doing them about every other month, and you're invited to come. Come worship the Lord. It's a good time, man. What did you think about the other night?
I thought it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like there's something like you said about pretty much taking all the world out of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just about as basic as it possibly could be. With really the only thing that we've got in there is the obvious speakers, microphones, and all that. But other than that, it is the bare necessities.
Yeah.
It's like you don't have all the other things to like take your attention away. It's like really like it's you come over that little hill that's right there and come down that ditch embankment, and it's like you're in a completely different place.
Yeah.
And as soon as you get out there, man, it's just the whole mood, everything just completely swings.
Yeah.
It's like you just feel you're there for that purpose.
Yeah, and I feel like when I first approached Pastor Steve about doing this, and I really, even at the time, I didn't really know what to think about what would happen with it, you know, and I still don't know what the Lord's full intention is. But one thing that kind of stuck out was that, you know, it sure doesn't hurt for us to be out there just worshiping the Father, coming into his presence, dwelling with him on that property that eventually is going to be a place that reaches out to many, many people in this community.
Right.
And so I feel like it's kind of digging the wells of glory, you know, I mean, I don't think there's any better way for us to bless that land and just or to see God's hand on it than for us to encounter him there.
100%.
So again, if you're in our local area, whenever we put those notices out that we're going to do those, it's always going to be on a Saturday around 6:00. But we'll put that in the community. Come out and worship with us. It's a great time. So I guess let's move forward into kind of what we're really here for today. A couple episodes back, you got to hear a message that I spoke to that church, actually to New River Community Church of God there in Sneads Ferry, and I talked. The message itself was about the prodigal son. And Cooper and I, we did an episode where we call it Chopping It Up, where we kind of chopped it up about the prodigal son, and which was really a great time. That was our first discussional episode that we've had, really, where we really went back and forth with it, and I enjoyed that. I thought that was great, and so we're definitely going to be doing a lot more of that. But one part of that message that we didn't get into at all, that we want to kind of get into today. I shared a bit of my testimony about something I had dealt with over the past, I guess, about 3 years now. And I'm not going to get real far into it right now. I'm going to let Cooper share a little bit about it. But basically, it's this topic of unprocessed grief.
Yeah.
And the impact that can have on us. And, you know, we got to talking just on the phone about that. And as we were kind of thinking about, next topics to get into, and we both kind of hit us both at the same time,
right?
About unprocessed grief. And, this is something I think a lot of people go through, may not even realize they're going through it. And so we're going to try to be as vulnerable as we can and get into the messy thing of grief, man. Yeah. So, how about you just share with us, some of what you've experienced in that, and then we'll just kind of go from there.
Yeah. Obviously through life, you have the privilege of loved ones but the other side is that sometimes you have to watch them leave.
Yeah.
And after I got clean, a cat that was a pretty integral part of my life from the time I was a teenager, his name was Justin Picarella. It's so funny because he would always just kind of like show back up randomly, because Justin had his struggles with addiction as well. And we kind of comforted each other in that, sometimes enabled. He lived with me for a little while we were both using. And then one day I had I think I had 2 years clean. Mm-hmm. And I found Justin sitting in a rocking chair outside of the Hampstead Country Store, which I found him there multiple times. And I would always walk up to him, I'd be like, buddy, hit me with the good stuff. What's going on this time?
Right.
And he jumped in the truck and we talked, and he ended up getting clean. And we shared the same clean date this time when he got clean, obviously a couple years apart. So we were in it together, and like I got to watch the light come back on in his eyes. I got to see him start really to enjoy his life again. And the thing about Justin is, man, you want to talk about somebody that experienced loss. This kid lost his father to suicide. He lost his younger sister to cancer. A lot of grief in his life, and he carried a lot of guilt because when his sister was in the hospital, a lot of times he didn't know how to really process that grief, and he would self-medicate. But then he got clean and he started working through that, and like you could see the lights come back on. You could see him start to really love to live again. And like we both shared the same faith basis. Like we talked about the Lord and Christianity together,
right?
Which was phenomenal. You know, this is my brother. Like this is a cat I've known since he was about 14, 15 years old. He came up and loaded a truck with us at the fish house, and but then you give that some time, and he got his driver's license back, and like a lot of us do, we start to take our will back, you know, when things start going the other way. And he decided that he was going to drink again. And I just remember being devastated, you know, and it scared the crap out of me. And like we had a lot of really tough conversations where I was really, really hard on him, and, you know, and he didn't like that, sometimes too hard. Like I have a tendency to be a little brash and cut deep. Because I think that the only way sometimes is tough love, especially with another man, and that's not always the right way to do it.
Right.
And so we didn't talk for a little while, and then the last time I ever saw him, he was at a gas station, and it's the same gas station, man. And I pulled up beside his pickup truck, and he had started doing electric work too, so we were kind of talking about that. And last thing I ever got to say to him was, "Hey, man, I love you. If you ever need anything, please reach out." And then I'd say about a month later, I got a phone call on a Sunday morning before I was getting ready to go load the fish truck. It was my mom, and I knew it was nothing good. And he got in a drunk driving accident and hit a tree with his truck.
Wow. And
he didn't make it. The other boy that he was with, he did make it. And we'll get to that in a minute, but I just remember just the hurt that I felt. Like I couldn't even talk about it really, but I knew that I had to. So I'll be the first person I called was Mariah. Like we had just started out in our relationship, really, like in the very beginnings of it.
Yeah.
And like we'd been seeing each other for a little while, but like just getting down to the nitty gritty of like seriousness and the logistics and all that fun stuff that comes with the first part of a relationship. So I called her. I ended up going to church with my mom. I didn't load the fish truck that day because I didn't know how to be at that fish house, the place where like me and him, our relationship really formed there.
Right.
I didn't know how to be there. And I just remember being so angry. You know, and I remember being so mad at him because I felt like he betrayed me and let me down. Right. You know, in my selfish mind, like he had hurt me. And that's the thing that when an addict who's in recovery then uses, like you're not thinking about the people you leave behind.
Yeah. And
that's the tough part. Now
we've talked a little bit about this. This was like the first time you've really experienced somebody that close.
That close, yeah. I'd lost another kid that I went to high school with, but like this was like my little brother. Like
right.
even after he had started drinking again, there was a period of time like I didn't know how to not talk to Justin, so I'd still meet up with him out. He was staying with his grandfather. I'd just go sit on the back porch until like midnight, just talking life, everything under the sun, the Lord, everything.
Yeah.
That he was my brother in that sense. We could do that. We could talk about anything. No judgment. It was amazing, you know, to have that relationship with another man. And I just remember being so hurt. And then his sister reached out to me and wanted me to be a pallbearer. And man, what a privilege! What a privilege! And I remember going to the viewing, which, gosh, that's never fun. And I just remember walking through the line to see all of his family, and all of them just looked at me and just said, "Man, you have no idea what you meant to him." And it broke my heart. Like it killed me because I was like, if you only knew what he meant to me, like if you only knew that he saved my life countless times just because I didn't use over the stuff that I had going on. Mm-hmm. If you only knew like how he was there for me. And that carried over into being at the funeral. Like I just remember sitting there so angry because I was just like, a lot of these people didn't get to know him the way that I did. Mm-hmm. And like, I carried that with me for a long time after that. And the same way I carried that same anger at him, I was so mad at him. Like I remember even to the point where like when me and Mariah got really serious and I knew I wanted to marry, I was so pissed because I was like, you don't get to meet my wife, man. Yeah. And like we were supposed to grow old together. Like you were supposed to meet my kids. Like you're going to be their uncle. And God, it destroyed me. Like I just remember a long period of time where like I just had this void, and really that which is so terrible is that the grief in a lot of senses that gets comfortable. You know, you get comfortable in that place of sadness and in darkness, you know, because you don't want to see the other side of it. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's that you don't want to do the work to get out of it, or in my case, it was like if I don't feel this, then I've forgotten him. You know, if I don't still feel this huge hole in my heart, then like I've forsaken him.
Yeah, I think that's I think the way you described it's exactly right. That's a common thing. You know, we've all heard about the steps of grief, and they're real. You know, that stuff's legit, and there's no timetable. You know, there's no it should take you this long to get through steps 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
You know, it just doesn't work that way. Everybody, you know, everybody's different, and we're all mixed bags. We're all complex, and there's just a lot going on. But the one danger when it comes to this kind of thing is getting stuck.
Yeah.
In that dark place.
Yeah.
And it's in your case, I wouldn't say it's guilt, but it almost could be kind of like guilt.
Yeah.
Of, you know, if you don't have this pain, then what do you have? And you don't know how else to feel about it at the time. You know? I know that people that I've ministered to kind of going through that, you have to tell them and they can't hear it. And it's not really even for them to hear it now. It's for some point it'll click, but you have to tell them this will get better.
Yeah.
You will be able to breathe again.
Yeah.
You will be able to, you know, for lack of a better phrase, being cliche, but you know, you will be able to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
Like the day will come when all your thoughts about them are not just pain.
100%.
You know, it will shift. Are you going to be over it? Are you going to be back to normal? The truth is no.
Yeah.
Like when you lose somebody that close to you, you're scarred forever.
Yeah.
And it'll change you. But but hopefully, you know, if you're walking with the Lord especially, it can change you for the good.
Right.
You know.
Well, and that's where the healing comes in, and through a lot of great like spiritual men in my life, and through talking to just about anybody I could. Yeah. Because for a while I tried to hide it. You know, I pretended like everything was okay because I didn't want anybody to see me wear that. You know, because I couldn't imagine being his mom who had now lost 2 children, and I couldn't imagine being his sister that had lost 2 siblings. You know, so I was like, I felt some shame in that. Yeah. But at the same time, I had to deal with the fact that I lost a brother. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until I got a suggestion from somebody they told me to write him a letter, which I didn't really feel like that suited our relationship. So it wasn't until his birthday rolled around and I went to the gravesite and I just stood out there and talked to him. Yeah. And I found a lot of healing in that, and like sat there and I prayed. And I just talked to him about, like me and you were talking right now, about like what the people that we knew had going on and how much I missed them and how much I loved them, and I forgave them. Yeah. Because that was the big thing, right? Was that like I had to forgive him. Yeah. Because he would never want to hurt me. You know, that was the relationship we had, and I had to stop kind of feeling sorry for myself in that instance in order for me to be able to heal and to be able to carry those good memories, because there was so much great stuff that we shared together. Mm-hmm. And I had to be able to turn the page and sit out there and get that closure that I needed so I could remember him in the light that he deserved to be remembered in, because that was like the whole reason I was upset at the funeral, because I got to share moments with this cat that not a whole lot of people did, and got to see him for who he really was, and he was an amazing person, man. And yeah, that helped me through it with prayer and just being able to be out there and have that communication. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, and like writing the letter thing, and I've heard people say it before. I mean, it's a good cathartic thing, because it'll, it's really, it's about just getting all that stuff inside of you, getting it out. Yeah. You know, getting it into the open, into the light. whether it's good, bad, right, wrong, it doesn't matter. There's not any right and wrong when it comes to grief. Well, I say that.
Right.
Maybe that's not quite true because you can get really tripped up. And so let me rephrase that. But there's no, you got to get that stuff out.
Yeah.
And you being able to go to the grave and have the conversation, and he's gone, whatever, but you were able to get that stuff out.
Yeah.
And it does a lot. And the forgiveness aspect of it, that's huge, man. I mean, that's probably, I bet most people who get stuck in grief, there's some sort of unforgiveness, that's stuck in their heart that keeps them tied to that.
Yeah.
And you can't really overstate that. I know for me, I kind of getting into the thing that I shared in that message. That was what I found in my heart that I didn't realize was there, was bitterness.
Right.
It had festered really bad, and I didn't know it was festering. And just, I guess, to kind of get into that, for anybody that maybe didn't hear the story, and when I tell it again, I might get into more details. But so my wife and I, when we got married, she had 2 daughters, and they were 5 and 7, and that's Holly and Shauna, and they became my daughters, and love them to death. And we all, man, we kind of had the picture perfect thing going on for probably the first 7 years of our marriage. Everything was really good. I mean, I can't really think of anything that was not like, everything was great. The kids were great. We had a good relationship. We were running our own business, making pretty good money, doing ministry, feeling like we were doing what we were called to do. The teenage years for my girls got rough for both of them.
Right.
Got rough, and that's typical, but it got really rough. And in the middle of that, I had just become the pastor at a church, and the transition wasn't great, which was kind of sad because the guy who was the pastor before me was really a really good friend of mine. And just, man, sometimes just the way these things go, and it wasn't on him, I don't feel like it was on me. There was just all these other factors that just made this transition just not great. Yeah. And so we're in the midst of transitioning into leadership into this church. The church had kind of, in the year before, had been struggling a bit. So, I mean, there wasn't a lot there, not a lot of people, not a lot of resources. But so, so we come in to that new ministry, but Tammy and I, had wanted to have our own kid, and I had waited, she really had kind of been mentioning to me, hey, this is something we need to think about. My wife's a little bit older than I am. I'm not going to share her age. It's for her to share.
There you go.
But she's a little older than I am, and so she knew the clock was ticking a little bit, and so she would just mention it to me every so often, and I just wasn't ready. I mean, being in ministry, having our business, the daughters. I mean, we just had a lot going on, and so I finally started thinking, okay, I need to start thinking about this. I mean, my wife is probably she's very young in her. Like physically, she nobody ever thinks that she's the age that she is. And me saying that, I feel like I'm setting mines for myself to just blow up. But anyways, between us though, I look a lot older for my age, and she looks a lot younger for her age. Let me say it like that. So most people think we're the same age. If not, think I'm older, which that's anyways. But But so the clock was ticking, we knew the clock was ticking. And my wife had, so with her last child, she had her tubes tied. And come to find out, she didn't really know it went this way. We tried to go through doing a tubal reversal. And when they went in to do the reversal, there were no tubes there to do work with.
Right.
Basically, she had an old school doctor when she had them tied. When he burned them, he there was nothing really left.
Yeah.
He's gonna make sure she weren't getting pregnant again.
Yeah.
That was tough because that's when you get that surgery done, the way they cut you. I mean, it's kind of similar to like a C-section. I mean, you're cut down, your pelvic area and across all the muscles there, your core muscles, and so it was a tough recovery for her. So that was kind of a blow, and it was it was sad, but we still had hope. And so we decided we wanted to try to go the IVF route, in vitro fertilization. And let me say up front that because I've seen where certain groups of believers have some really strong opinions on that, and hey, you can have the opinions on that stuff. They're not all wrong in the opinions that they have. But so I guess in saying that, we were posed with some moral dilemmas during that, but we had to pray through them, and we had to make the decisions we felt were right. And those decisions basically were, we ended up, the first time we did IVF, we ended up, things were going really well. We had 4 embryos take. Okay. So what they would typically do is they would freeze 3 of them, for, if you want to try again, if something goes wrong, and then they would just implant 1. Well, this was one of those moral dilemmas because, okay, we believe life starts at conception, and now we're faced with this issue of, okay, are we going to freeze this life and maybe let it sit there for decades, maybe forever, if we didn't need it, or if we want, there's a lot of real funky gray area there,
Yeah.
And so we just said, we're going to implant all of them. This is a one-shot go because we just didn't feel good about that. We didn't feel like that fit what we believed in our heart. And so we had all of them implanted. We had 1 take, and Tammy got pregnant, and, we're super excited. Let me back up a little bit. I skipped over a big part. We really didn't have the finances to do the IVF. So when we went to do the tubal reversal, that was around $5,000. The IVF was going to be like 10 to 12, and we really didn't have it,
Yeah.
So we were praying, okay, God, if this is something you want us to do, you're going to have to miraculously provide, and we're just going to walk down that road. And sure enough, I get a phone call from my mom, and she's like, we've got the money. I'm like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? Well, your mama, that's my grandmother, my mom's mom, Ruth Chapman. Mama sold her property. She's had it for sale forever up in West Virginia.
Yeah.
I mean, forever. Never could sell it. And somebody come by and made the offer. It was the exact amount of money that we needed.
Right.
And she was the one that came to my mom and said, I want Andre and Tammy to have this so they can try to have a baby. So we get that call from mom, and she tells me, and at first I'm like, I can't take that, Mom. I can't, it's family.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the last things you want to do is get into some money issue with family, you know.
Yeah.
But my grandma, just one of the most beautiful hearts you'll ever meet in life. That's what she wanted to do. And she basically told Mom that's what's going to happen. It's what I want to happen.
Yeah.
That's where it's going. If they don't take it, then it's just going to sit here,
Yeah.
So we did. So we fast forward. So Tammy's pregnant. All the checkups are going good. Everything's good. We get to where we see the heartbeat. I think around 12 weeks or so, we see a heartbeat. It's exciting. Then we have a little cold streak in the weather, and Tammy was taking the girls to school. And while she was in the line at the school in the car, somebody rear-ended her.
Yeah.
And she was fine. Everybody was fine. It wasn't really that bad. We, went to the doctor. Everything checked out fine. no problems. Didn't seem like any problems immediately. But then on our next scheduled checkup, we're driving up to Raleigh for all these checkups. So it's, every few weeks we're driving up to Raleigh. So we get up there and we're doing the ultrasound, and, you have that moment. I'm sure some of you listening have had this moment. You'll know what I'm talking about. But, they're doing the ultrasound, looking at everything, and then it's like the whole atmosphere in the room changes, and the doctor's demeanor changes, and he pulls the screen to himself so that we can't see. And we're like, so is everything okay, Doc? He's like, I don't think so. And he's checking and he's taking the pictures, and he ends up telling us, the child's lost. It doesn't have a heartbeat. That's what he said. Doesn't have a heartbeat. Unfortunately, this guy's bedside manner sucked. That was just terrible. Yeah. And he's a doctor, and he does this every day, so it's whatever. But it wasn't great for us. I remember just holding my wife, and we didn't know what to say. I mean, we were just silent there. And so he says, well, we need to do a D&C. We need to get her cleaned out. And, a D&C is a procedure that they do that's kind of like an abortion, but it's not. It's, in this case, they're just trying to clean out the uterus, clean everything so that there's not infection.
Right.
So instead of, like, if you were to have a miscarriage naturally, you would pass that naturally. But because we're in the hospital, his concern was for Tammy's health, right? It's all legit concern. But I turned to him and I said, we can't do that right now. And he's like, he really tried to convince us. I said, look, I understand. I asked him, what are the risks? He said, well, she may pass it fine, but she could get infection, and it could be bad. So, okay. I said, this is the thing for us, though. We believe in the Lord Jesus. We know that he's able to heal and resurrect. And so we have, and my exact words to him were, I have to give our God a chance to move. I have to. And I don't know what's going to happen, but just we're people of faith, and we believe in that. And so, and we talked about it. I didn't just make those decisions. Me and Tammy talked about it. But, so we went home and we prayed. We had church that Sunday. We told them what was going on, and they gathered around us to pray and lay hands and pray, and, everyone praying in faith, and we believed. But it just didn't work out the way that we wanted. Tammy ends up miscarrying the baby, ends up passing the baby naturally, which was a very painful process for her. And in that moment, I'm like, you just go into, I got to take care of my wife mode. Mm-hmm. You go straight into, I got to take care of my wife mode. I got to make sure she's okay. Fast forward a little bit, we decide to try again. Got to come up with the money again. We land some big jobs that we're able to put money away, had a couple other people, chip in to try to help out. We go to a different facility to do it this time. And the eggs just weren't viable. And the doctor, I appreciated this doctor at least telling us, he said, look, said, we could try again, but the odds of this working out just are really, really low. Yeah. And I appreciated him at least being honest with us. He said, it's just, they just are not the best quality. First go around, everything seemed to be great, but, and who knows? Anyways, so that's devastating, because for me, kind of some of what was going on in my interior world, in my emotional state, I gave my life to the Lord at 14. And those of you listening, you've probably heard my testimony, so I probably don't have to get back into all that. But I gave my life to the Lord at 14, felt the call of God in my life at like 15, 16 years old, and was in ministry at 18. and was a pastor at 19. Not that was great, but hey, but was a pastor at 19. I felt like I've given my life to the Lord, and to his work, to the ministry. I've given my life to that, and I'm raising these daughters as my own that aren't my biological daughters, but I'm raising them as my own. Teenagers are teenagers, and in some ways I kind of felt rejected by them to a degree. Just they were going through their own stuff, know, and I honestly, I would just, I had to grow in maturity over time to understand that, it wasn't their fault what they were dealing with. They didn't have their biological dad. They felt rejected. And so I'm the man in their life, and they kind of took that out on me.
Yeah.
Which is natural. And I understood it later and was able to process that better. But at the time, the way I felt was, okay, God, I've taken this family. I'm raising this family. I'm doing your work. And there's just this one thing that I want. And there's this miraculous provision to allow us to get pregnant, and then it's all taken away.
Yeah.
And it just felt like the worst, what's the phrase? Bait and switch. Mm-hmm. That's how it felt.
Yeah.
It's like it got dangled in front of us and then taken away. And for the first time in my life, I felt like God had let me down. I felt like I didn't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
I bottled that up and put all my focus on my wife. I need to make sure that she's good. We were both upset really bad. And for her, I felt like, okay, this is a time to put this negative energy. How can we turn this into something good? And, we had the painting company, but it was hard, any kind of construction is hard on the body. Right. Yeah. And Tammy, was starting to have some effects from doing the painting. Like it was starting to mess with her arms and her shoulders and doing damage. And the chiropractor and doctors were telling us, look, if she continues down this road, it's going to be bad.
Oh yeah,
she'll end up being disabled. And so it's like, we got to transition. And so, one of the great things for her, she went to school to go get her GED, did that with flying colors. And then she went to trade school to become a stylist, and now she has her own salon. She runs it. She loves it. She does great. She was able to put all that energy into that, and that was very good for her.
Yeah. And
she handled the whole process a lot better than I did. She's going to eventually share her testimony. And she's been through a lot, and she's strong in that area of when things happen she don't understand, just really being able to give it over to the Lord. She's just strong in that area, better than I am. And so I remember driving up to the job site one day, and when I pulled up to the job site, I remember being in my Dodge work van, and I parked the truck, and something I feel like in my brain, in my head, just switched. I felt this slowness come over me, this drowsiness, this slow thinking. Wasn't having a stroke. There wasn't anything really happening, except for I think I was experiencing the trauma from the loss, but I didn't know what was happening.
Right.
I didn't really talk to anybody about it. But I mean, I have to admit, from that day forward, my recall, memory and just recall, it's never been the same, even to this day. My just quickness, mentally, sharpness, just to me was never the same. Other people say, well, I never could tell any difference, but I can. Yeah. I'm a guy who preaches every week, who is communicating. I could tell something was different. Yeah. And at the time I didn't know what it was, but now I understand that, when you suffer an emotional trauma, it actually affects the hormones in your brain, can throw your chemical balance off, and there's a lot of things that can come from that, you know, it's, the kind of thing like these veterans, these war veterans go through. They experience, the trauma of war, and even the ones that maybe weren't injured physically, they come home with they're not the same.
No.
And that's what I was going through. And so, man, I just continued to pastor that church, love my wife, raise our kids, fight through it. And I mean, so what? You've got to fast forward, 6-7 years or so. I've resigned from this church, and we have a little house church going on. And, good gathering, it's, feel like it's what God wants us to do. And doing that for about a year, everything's fine. But I remember, so when my oldest daughter, Shauna, got pregnant, and she had her son, Kyle, and he was a bit premature, right? So when they brought her, when she came home, brought him home, he was struggling a little bit because he was a little premature. Had to go back to the hospital a couple of times. Well, he went back one time, and I remember late that night getting a call from my wife, and it was basically, you really need to be praying for your grandson, because they don't know if he's going to make it through the night.
Yeah.
They're not sure. And I just was silent. I remember when I hung up that phone, and one of the things that we want to do with this podcast is be as transparent as we can. I had this rage come up out of my belly, and I remember with grit teeth, clenched teeth, tears in my eyes, looking up to the Lord and saying, "You MFer, you better not do this again."
Yeah.
And after I said it, I was like, whoa. Because I didn't realize that I had that in me. I love the Lord.
Yeah.
I have given my life for the work of the ministry. And in that moment, it was a gut check. It was like, wait, what, where'd that come from?
Yeah, well, I feel like that's the thing, especially when you feel like you've gotten slighted, like you've been presented with these things, and it almost feels like someone, if not God, has pulled one over on you.
Yeah.
How easy is it to turn and take all that rage and point it in that direction? Well,
and so in our own family, we had just a lot of things going on, like I've alluded to. Both my daughters really struggled through their teenage years. We had a lot of stuff going on with them. We had other things going on within the church. Then it was just like this, I felt like this never ending barrage of like spiritual attack, and we had endured so much of that. And now here we are. When I resigned from that church, it wasn't great. Like, it wasn't it was not on the best of terms. I didn't leave in any bad way or anything, but I was resolved that I would be there for 30 years. Like, that was going to be where I did the thing that I felt like God wanted me to do,
right.
Plant a lighthouse that would shine the light of Christ in that community, grow a spiritual family, that would impact this community. I was there for the long haul. And again, that was what I thought, not necessarily what the Lord had showed me or anything like that. That was what I thought. And, the old saying, we make plans and God laughs.
Mm-hmm.
He obviously had other intentions. And maybe I had even overstayed my time. And that's why it had to end as abruptly and hard as it did.
Right.
Because sometimes that's what God has to do with us.
Yeah.
You think about the apostles. I don't know if they ever would have taken the gospel to the ends of their regions if it were not for Nero trying to kill all the Christians, So anyways, I just kind of, I kind of tucked that in, and we end up having, another worship gathering at the house that next Sunday, and I'm leading worship. And as I'm singing, like, the words are just getting stuck in my mouth. They felt gross because they were not sincere.
Yeah.
I did not want to worship him because I was angry.
Yeah.
That bitterness had come up, and I didn't want anything to do with that dude, frankly. And look, I'd been a pastor a long time. I've known the Lord a long time. That can happen to anyone.
100%.
So then I ended up having to message the group and say, look, I have something in my heart that I have got to tend to, and I'm angry, and I can't lead like this.
Yeah.
I cannot lead like this. I have to tend to this, or this is going to kill me spiritually. And I don't regret that for a minute. I think that was one of the strongest things that I've ever done, frankly.
100%. Yeah.
I think it would be easy for somebody in my position and having been a leader within the church and really in every aspect of my life I've led since I was 18 years old.
Yeah.
And it would have been easy to just say, hey, I'm just going to keep going through. But if I would have done that, this is the problem. If I would have done that, and look, I bet there's pastors out here right now listening to this. Some of you need to check yourself. Some of you need to do some honest reflection, because, man, ministry's hard, and life is hard, and a lot of times we are operating as half the person we should be, and that's not really giving God glory.
No,
it's not honorable. We get this hero mentality that if we were to step away, everything will fall apart.
Yeah.
And that is just as prideful and arrogant as it can be. And so it was the best thing I ever did to say, look, I can't lead like this. I'm not suited to lead right now. I had to be honest with them, and I told them, I don't know that I'll ever be back to doing this.
Yeah.
I don't know. And I love these people. These are people I had been in relationship with. Not just that they were like congregants. That's not how it rolls with us. This is family.
100%.
This is family. And so it was a hard thing to do, but it was the right thing to do. Thank God they're a mature group, because they were very understanding. They wanted me to be well, So I thank God for them. I thank God for Ground Zero and the Ground Zero family and everybody, because they, it means a lot when you don't have to worry that if everyone's going to be okay.
Yeah.
So, man, I went through another year of just, we weren't going to church. We weren't having any kind of gatherings. I kind of went on a journey of, hey, who am I outside of ministry?
Right.
Who am I? What am I? Because this is how I identified myself. Yeah. And some of that journey was good. Some of it was not.
Right.
Some of it was not great, because I did eventually find myself entertaining thoughts and ideas that I probably never would have in the past. Because it's not that God would ever leave us, but while I was trying to figure things out, I definitely was not engaging him the way that I should.
Yeah.
Now we end up going to a worship service at this church, and while I'm worshiping, eyes closed, I begin to see this vision, if you want to call it. But it was this image of basically, it's like I was walking up behind this like porch swing, but it wasn't on a porch. It was like in a yard, and it's like a bench swing, I guess is the best way to describe it. And there was a man who I knew to be Jesus, sitting there with his arm around this young boy, probably about 7 years old. And I walk around, and as I walk around, I can't really see the face of the young boy. Don't know what he looks like. Yeah. It's like it's blurred out, you know. And Jesus is really, really bright. I can barely see his face. But I hear him say to me, "You're really going to like him when you get to meet him." And I mean, I remember just weeping. Because it had never crossed my mind that I had a child in eternity waiting for me. And here's the crazy thing, all right? I'm the guy who is a pastor at 19 years old. Study the word, know the word. Yeah. Have preached umpteen funerals and messages and comforted hundreds of folk who have struggled with loss and grief, and even that have lost children. Yeah. Right. I know in my brain that a child that passes away is with the Lord. Right. I know that, but I kid you not, it never crossed my mind. I was so engulfed by the pain of the loss and the loss of the opportunity of the child, you know, of having that child, that it never even crossed my mind until that vision. And then a couple weeks later, there was like just not really another vision or anything, but just as I start pressing back into the Lord, and there was just this moment of revelation that it was the grace of God to let us conceive. Yeah. Remember, I thought he put something in front of us and ripped it away. That's how I felt. Yeah. But he had to show me that it was his grace to let us conceive. Why? Because life begins at conception. And if we had never gotten pregnant, I would not have a child waiting for me in heaven. And so I had this revelation that, okay, there's this kid. It was God's grace and provision to let us conceive. And yes, we ended up enduring some pain, but this life is but a vapor. Mm-hmm. And I'll have all eternity with what I believe is a son, forever, with all with my daughters and with my wife's son that passed away. Like we're going to all be together with the Lord Jesus forever. And from that moment, I mean, I was obviously I was healed. Yeah. That bitterness inside of me had been purged, and it still took me a little while to really venture back into any kind of ministry type stuff or anything like that. It was really my wife heeding the leading of the Holy Spirit to start going and fellowshipping at this church. And, I remember, and she didn't pressure me. She just said, "Hey, I'm going to church, and I'll see you later." Mm-hmm. And I was like, I said, "So you're going down the New River, right?" "Yeah." So, okay. I said, "Well, just give me a few minutes. Let me get dressed." Yeah. I'm not going to not be there with my wife.
Can't be that guy, buddy.
I'm not going to be that guy. So,
you are not that guy, pal.
That's probably just pride and ego too, but the Lord will use whatever to get to you.
No kidding.
And anyways, but it was that the realization. And so here's the thing. It's like that light at the end of the tunnel thing. Yeah. Like when you're in the middle of the fog of grief, you can't see anything.
No kidding.
You can't see anything. But it's, hopefully I ain't gonna rob you on this one, but it's like what Romans 8:28 says. It says, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." Yes. Now, when I preach, I love to get into the Greek, right? I love to just get into what's the real deep meaning of all these words. And I always joke with anywhere where I preach. When it says, "And we know that all things," you know what the Greek means for all? It means all. Yeah. Yeah. It means everything. Uh-huh. It says exactly what it means in the English. It means the same thing in the Greek. God will use all things to the good for those who love him, those that are called according to his purpose. That doesn't exclude anything.
No. How prevalent is that in your life? I know it's prevalent in mine.
Oh, yeah. 100%. 100%.
And then I think that also, with what we just talked about, rolls right into Matthew 5:4. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted.
Yeah.
It doesn't tell us how.
Right.
And sometimes it's not the way we want to be.
Right.
Sometimes it is that big old slap in the face.
Yeah.
That helps us get over that edge. When it's especially feeling like, because I relate in the sense of, like, I had this brother that, like, I saw the light come back on. Like I had this life. This was going to be a lifelong journey that we were in together. I mean, we shared the same clean date.
Right.
We were supposed to celebrate that every year together.
You have this whole life planned out.
Yeah, which goes back to earlier. We make plans, God's laughs. And like, I felt robbed. I mean, and like, I feel like I was so mad at Justin for that, especially from like a 12-step recovering addict standpoint too. Like it was him that made the choice, so I couldn't even, and that being said, it wouldn't allow me to even like really talk to God about it, because I was just so mad. I mean, rage is rage, anger is anger.
Yep, same.
So I was just so mad. I was just trying to not lose my crap constantly. And with that anger came a lot of guilt, because here I am, this mad at somebody who just lost their life.
Right.
That'll never get to experience the things that I get to experience.
Well, and here's the thing that, I hope that you probably do, but I think that somebody probably needs to hear. The best way, like, to get rid of that guilt, well, one, forgiveness is great.
Yeah.
But realize that person that you love, that loved you, that you lost.
Yeah.
Like, their goal, their desire, their hope and dream for your life is not that.
Yeah.
It's not that place of bitterness. It's not that place of sadness. It's not that. And I'm not saying you can't be sad.
Oh, 100%.
But they would want you to have the most glorious, beautiful life.
100%.
And the best way that you can honor somebody who's passed is to live a life that honors them.
Yes.
To live the life that they would have wanted to live. And I don't mean like some weird, I'm going to go do what they want.
No, it's a living amends.
Yeah. It's living out, a good life. Love your wife, love your kids,
Yes.
Go after the things in life. And that honors them more than you holding on to some bitterness or something.
Right.
They wouldn't want that for you.
No.
That's to me, that's the best way you can honor somebody.
And like the peace that comes from like you said, knowing that you'll get to see your child in heaven. Like that. I will be reunited with Justin.
Yeah.
And the other beautiful part of that, like, he's not hurting anymore.
Right.
That was really when I finally made that connection, because like you said earlier, I was so lost in myself. Right. I couldn't make that connection. He was no longer fighting that internal struggle anymore.
Yeah.
Like, he wasn't hurting. Like, he was now with his sister.
Well, and how selfish is it of us? I've had to ask myself this question. It's like, look, dude, do you really believe what you say you believe?
Yeah.
Because what's the word say? The word says to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord.
Yes.
Goal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, victory.
That is the end of the race.
Right.
Sir.
And that's our whole goal. The whole point of our existence here is to live a life that glorifies Him, that we'd shine His light to others, and that then we'll be united with Him forever in eternity. Like, that's the goal. And we'll get hung up on, I mean, it's selfish, really.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'd be willing to say that a good 80% of the issues that I deal with come from selfisness.
Yeah. No, it's like 95 for you.
I probably. I'm even being selfish about the percentage, so I don't want to look so bad. I mean, let's just go full bore here. And whatever the other 5 is stubborn, which is a lot of times stems from selfishness.
Right.
So there's that. And man, I tell you, and like, but that, like, learning how to grieve through that situation, really, really helped down the road. Like, it's funny that we're doing this today, because today is marks 1 year of me losing my grandmama.
Right.
Which that obviously didn't come the same way as a car crash where I lost my brother. So like we obviously had time to prepare. Like we knew it was getting ready to happen. I got to spend Christmas with her. I got to cook. I always do a low country boil at her house for Christmas, and she was able to be there for that. And then in January she fell and went into the hospital. I just remember sitting there in the hospital and Thank God Mariah was there. If I start talking about Mariah too much, I will just sob. Because I've got the best wife. And, you know, I just remember leaving that hospital saying, and here you want to talk about selfish. I was like, I looked at Mariah, the tears just rolling down my face, and I am not ready to lose her.
Yeah.
I am not ready to lose her. But then you fast forward, and like she ended up being in the nursing home, moved into hospice, and like I had the opportunity to be there. And the last time I saw her, it was a tough day, man, because you know she had dementia, and like you couldn't even really make out what she was saying a lot of the time. You could just tell she was in so much pain. Like, dude, so wild about her. She was so tough. Like she fell down and broke her back, and you know, and broke her wrist, and with dementia she would forget where she was at, and so that in turn, like she with a broken back, she would get out of bed and try to escape. Like that just speaks to just how tough she was.
Yeah.
And but anyways, we were sitting there like the last day I saw her, and you couldn't really make out a lot of what she was saying. She was just in pain, and like I always had this nature of my grandmother. You talk about a sweet woman. Like I heard her curse twice my entire life.
Yeah.
I caused both of those instances myself. And but just like it, I mean, she was another parent to me because she lived right there across the yard from us. So anytime we had anything going on, or my dad was out of town, I was the grandmama.
Yeah.
You know, and how much I loved to be there. Like I remember when she would pick me up from school, I would just be so excited to go stay at her house. And it's like this was a woman that I had nothing but unconditional love for my entire life, and really just had nothing but unconditional love for me too, like the purest form.
Yeah.
And so we're sitting there, you know, and it's about time because they've got to do some things like they've got to let her use the bathroom and all that. So I just was like, yeah, this is probably time for me to go. And as I'm leaving, you know, I stopped. And like, mind you, we can't understand a lot of what she was saying the entire time we're there. I look at her and I say, Grandmama, I love you. It's like she just perked up out of that complete fog and looked me dead in my eyes and said, I love you too, son. Mm. And right then I knew that was going to be the last time I saw her. But how much peace I got from that. Yeah. Like, and knowing that she got to see me clean. She got to see my beautiful wife. She knew I was taken care of. It was like, that was like she knew I was okay. Yeah. And, you know, she had lost, like we had lost my grandfather before I was even born. So like, just knowing that, like, I just remember sobbing. My sister called me and we're just sobbing, talking about her being reunited with Granddaddy. Yeah. And the laugh and joke, and I found a lot of comfort as my grandfather was a tough man. It's like, thank God somebody's up there looking out for him. I can only imagine what he's trying to stir up. Right. And, but without going through that loss with Justin and learning how to deal with those emotions and things, I would have never got to experience that beautiful moment with my grandmother before she passed. Yeah. Because I would have been so caught up in the selfishness and the anger and all that, and it would have robbed me of that. And that I'll never forget that, because a lot of times you don't get that. You don't get those last moments so that's just, man, I don't know. It was just, that was such a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of speaks to like something we don't think about a lot. But especially as believers, like we want to live honorable lives.
Yes.
Okay. Not only so that we honor the Father, but so that the people that we love, man, so they can have peace.
Yeah.
Because like, think about that. Like one of the things, and even so we can have peace. Yeah. One of the things that gave you peace was that she got to see you clean, got to see you with your wife, you know, happy. Yeah. You know, she got to see that. It wasn't left, you know, with this huge void of I wish, regret.
Yeah.
And you know, it's part of why it's not just so that we live good lives, man. There's so much more benefit to living honorable lives than just you. I mean, yes, you want to live a life that honors God. That's number one, but it is a blessing to so many others and to so many different parts of your life that you don't even realize.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That's super important. Well, man, I feel all like wore out.
Yeah, me too. That's a lot of emotion to process.
Jeez. Oh, man. So I do want to read. I do want to read at least one other scripture just for anybody that might be listening. Revelation 21:4. It says that he will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. Now here he's obviously talking about when we get to heaven. But the beautiful thing about the Father is that, one, he will, like, he's a, I have to say it the way I know how to say it. Like, he's a big boy, right? He can handle our mess.
Yes.
It's one of the beautiful things about God. Like, you may feel like your anger, you don't want to verbalize it, but he knows, right? Because he knows you.
Yeah.
Like, go ahead, read all the Psalms, read the Psalms. Half the time David's like screaming at the Lord, you know, and he gets it out of it. And then the rest of that Psalm, he's praising the Lord.
Right.
You know, God's a big boy, man. He can handle it. So be real with God. You know, I would just encourage anybody that's struggling with grief, you know, or working their way through grief. Be honest. Be transparent with the Lord. It's not really for his sake, it's for yours.
Yes.
Because once you get stuff out there and you're honest with God, you're giving room for him to be able to deal with it. Another thing I would say is that cut yourself some slack.
Yeah.
If you're dealing with grief, cut yourself some slack. It's okay to not be okay. You know, maybe you're the person that everybody depends on. Typically, maybe you're the glue of the family and you're going through grief. Listen, it's okay.
Yeah.
People will be able to handle themselves. People can take care of themselves. It's fine. You have a moment where you break down. It's okay. You know, give room for that. If we bottle that stuff up, you'll end up having that bitterness like I did, you know, and you don't want that. And if you do, I hope you work through that too. But I would just encourage you, you know, be okay with not being okay. And while you may not be able to see this in the moment, things will get better. You will be able to breathe again. You will be able to think about the ones that you lost without only thinking about pain. It's important to know that. Mm-hmm. And even if you can't wrap your head around that right now, remember it though, because a day's going to come when you're going to wake up and the colors are going to look vibrant again. The sounds are going to be beautiful again. You're going to begin to come back to a place of normality. And not that everything will be the same, and not that you won't hurt, but you will learn how to live with that pain. And I just encourage you to walk with the Lord through it. So Cooper, why don't you pray for us? And
I sure will.
Pray us out.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the opportunity that we have to speak as brothers and to speak plainly and openly, Father, and yet again to live in a place where we're allowed to do so. We thank you so much for this platform. We thank you for all the folks out there that are listening. And God, we just ask you to be out there with the ones who are hurting. And we just ask you to show them that there is a light, and to show them that healing is not them doing their lost loved ones a disservice, and to show them that there doesn't have to be any guilt in the healing process, Father. And I ask that you open their eyes. And I thank you so much for the things that you've shown me and Andre through this process in order for us to be so open and honest and to share so freely. And I thank you so much for the word, for which we can find so much comfort. I couldn't be more thankful, Father, for us to be able to sit here and to do this, and especially on a day like today, Lord, where I'll be honest with it was tough knowing that today was the day that I lost Grandmama a year ago, Father. So in order for us to be sitting here and doing this, it just couldn't feel more ordained by you, and it could not help me anymore, Father. I thank you so much for that. There's so much freedom in being able to sit here and to have these conversations and to know that your hand is all over it and that the Holy Spirit is here with us now, Father. For you say that when there's two or more of us together, that you are here. And
yes.
I can't think of anything more overwhelming, and just to know how small we really are and how wonderful you really are, Lord, that there is no pain that you cannot heal.
Yes.
Especially once we make those realizations and we allow you to heal it, Father. And for those that are out there, we just ask you that they have that realization.
Yes.
We thank you so much. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right, guys. Thank you for joining us again. And we will talk to you soon. Love you guys.
For more information about the ministry of Ground Zero, go to our website at groundzeronc.com. To contact us, email us at info@groundzeronc.com.